What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devindra Hardawar. This week, I'm joined by podcast producer Ben Elman. Hey, Ben.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, and special guest Jason Koebler from 404 Media. Hey, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Jason, because I feel like you're a good person to talk about kind of the hellscape of what's happening in the U.S. government right now. And we want to follow up with some comments we made about Elon Musk right after Trump's inauguration. We were joking that he really seemed like more like President Musk than some sort of special advisor. And honestly, that's kind of how it feels. At least depends, judging from all the meddling we've seen from Doge and his initiative and his lackeys in the administrative state. It seems like Elon Musk is taking a real strong hand in a lot of things, especially when it comes to money and funding. So we're going to dive into all of that. And I don't know, just try to figure out where we're going from here, folks. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes and drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. I feel like my first question here for you, Jason, is what the heck is happening? Because I don't know how we got into the situation where Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, is now just so strongly determining what is happening with federal agencies, with funding. Do we have a sense? Like, is it just the money that Musk invested in the Trump campaign that has given him this leeway at this point?
Well, there's definitely a whoa, dude aspect to what's happening. I mean, while you were saying that, I remember when like Elon Musk talked about politics before, but he
Yeah,
didn't really get behind Trump until the assassination attempt, and that was not that long ago. And now he's like this with the administration, and in many ways, seemingly dictating what is happening. I mean, you made that joke about President Musk, and I think that started as a joke, like in the first days of the presidency, and now he's giving speeches from behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. His son is talking to Trump and perhaps telling him to shut up, if you saw those clips. So, I mean, yeah, it really does seem like Elon Musk is dictating what is happening within the executive branch. I think the thing that I've heard most in terms of what is going on here is that Elon Musk really seems to care a lot about policy and what is happening here, whereas Trump doesn't care about that sort of thing. And so
right.
he's saying, like, Elon, do whatever you want. And what Elon seems to want to do is gut these really important agencies, starting with USAID, which provides, billions of dollars of aid all around the world, is like the most powerful soft power agency that the United States has.
Right.
And then start sort of going into the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau after that. I've been talking to dozens of federal workers across the entire government, and I feel like the message that I'm getting from them most often is, oh my God, the Doge bros are here today, or the specter of the Doge bros showing up at some point seems to like loom very large over really every agency at this point.
And it's weird how they're saying, "Oh my God, this is the Doge Bros." The Doge Bros, from reporting from Wired and other places, they're 19, 20-year-olds. One of them is like a freshman in college, and they're all just like Musk and Peter Thiel acolytes. This is the dumbest future. Like this, I did not expect, I don't know, our democracy to crumble like this, but really that is what it is. And I don't quite know how to explain it, that Musk and his lackeys have gotten this amount of leeway to do all this stuff. So I remember something we learned from the first Trump presidency is that he really hated the job, right? He didn't like actually doing work. He was watching TV all day, trying to like, half-ass as much as possible. So what seems to be happening here is like, yeah, Trump is or Musk is determining a lot of the administrative stuff. And I think the executive orders that we've seen, the deletion of all that stuff, is from the folks behind Project 2025, right? So it's like he's split up the actual work of what it takes to be a president, and he will show up for camera ops because that's what he loves. So we're not going to talk about the Project 2025 stuff, but a lot of those executive orders will have an impact in the tech world too. So we'll dive into that when we can. Brendan Carr, head of the FCC, like that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other episode of like how this is all gonna dismantle so many things that we love. And I don't know, the little bits of consumer friendly progress the Biden administration did. Just kind of a wild place we're in. You mentioned a couple of things. USAID, I have friends there, so I'm gonna, I don't know. I feel particularly pissed off about this because of the potential for good with that agency. There are legitimate arguments like, yes, soft power. Yes, it's very easy to hide spies in there to help them, manipulate things in other countries, but also legitimate good, right? Ben, there was something you wanted to point out, the actual tech angle, like one major tech thing that
Yeah.
USAID workers relied on.
So for USAID, you are posted all over the world
Right.
and
Your family
often,
is there. They've
yeah,
settled there. Yeah.
and often in very remote locations.
Mhm.
Think about USAID being like the Peace Corps on steroids. You're doing similar work to Peace Corps stuff, like getting into places in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, like places that don't usually get foreign aid, and you are living there for a long amount of time. But that also exposes you to some issues where there might be, local terrorist groups or something of the like that
Mhm.
might want to take your cache of aid that you want to, distribute between, X number of towns and villages. They have a piece of technology at USAID called Scry Panic that just like broadcasts your coordinates wherever you are in the world. If you have cell service, it will say, hey, this person really needs help. Send local authorities, send any like US forces if they're around there. Like, this is a huge alarm bell. And there have been some mixed reports of USAID workers and contractors just getting like bad token um messages when they try to
Mhm.
log into this, like, incredibly crucial piece of technology.
I mean, I'm not surprised there. People I know that have been there, I'm not gonna say their names, but over the weekend before a lot of this stuff was public, they were just like, "Hey, come home." They got messages like, "Hey, come home. You're done." And these are people who have settled in other countries, they have kids in schools, they have whole lives set up, and it's kind of evaporating in an instance. I think the story was like, wasn't that barred by a court? Like, what they're dismantling of USAID, but the damage has already been done.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing. If you're in a really remote
Yeah.
area and you're called home and, a court at some point says, "Oh, this is illegal, you can go back." It's not necessarily as easy as, "Oh, just go back to this
Right.
incredibly remote, place and spin up your project again." And so, whether this is deemed constitutional or not, and whether, the administration complies with what ultimately happens, lots of questions there. Um, the damage has already been done, like you said.
Yeah, and it's kind of really hard to fix this. Like from a lot of people I've talked to, it seems like the overall damage that's potentially happening to the administrative government right now, this could take years, decades. Like depending on how far they go, it could take a long, long time to fix a lot of these issues.
Well, can you be more
Yeah.
specific about that, Devendra? What do you
Mhm.
mean when you say, like, it could take years or decades to fix? Are we
You
talking
break
about data
USAID.
Yeah, are we talking about data breaches? Are we talking about, like, soft power? Like
I think it's like the actual infrastructure, and Jason, you may be able to talk about this better, but from what I've seen, the actual infrastructure of things, like, hey, the Consumer Finance Protection Board, like that thing didn't exist until after the '08 banking crisis, and that's all Liz Warren's idea. Um, that whole thing there is to protect consumers and to prevent another banking crisis. Essentially, it seems like that is just going to disappear. We have Doge people looking into the Treasury Department, right, and getting access to the federal payment system. There's a lot of reporting from security professionals who are like, "What the hell are you doing?" Because this information is highly protected, highly sensitive, and this stuff is going to get out there. There are a lot of arguments that many people in this government, including Musk and including Trump, are tied to foreign governments like Russia, like potentially China. Um,
That's a lot of hearsay, but
it's a
yeah,
lot of
s
listen, there's a reason Tesla is like the only foreign car, manufacturer in China.
mm.
They have a very close relationship there. There's a lot of hearsay, and there's a lot of like, hey, a lot of money has been transferred between these countries and these individuals. Anyway, we should like get back a little to the top. Do we have a sense of like what Doge is actually trying to accomplish versus what they're saying, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, so Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency, and they've been brought on nominally to detect fraud, waste, and abuse, is what
Mm-hmm.
both Trump and Musk are constantly saying. And the way that they set this up was they took this agency called the U.S. Digital Service, which was spun up under Obama after the healthcare.gov rollout disaster. And it's essentially this strike team of coders, lawyers, policy people, design people who go from agency to agency and solve things. And there were hundreds of people who worked there, and rather than create a fully new agency, they basically installed Musk as the king of this agency. He brought in a bunch of his people, and one of the reasons why they use this agency was it has the status that allows for very easy hiring, which is why you have former Tesla interns and
Hmm.
Neuralink fellows and stuff like that running around the government right now. And so you know I hate to even say this, but I feel like it should be said. Like there is real, like the federal government is very bloated. It's a very bloated,
Sure.
apparatus, and so anyone who works in government will tell you this. And there needs to be some sort of reform. But rather than, follow any sort of like they just emailed everyone in the federal government and said, "Hey, you want to quit?"
Hmm.
Which is not really. Maybe that works if you're running Twitter. We can argue about that. But when you're running, in the most powerful government in the world, it's quite concerning. And so, a lot of what Doge has done has been stopped in the short term by the courts. We'll see how this sort of all shakes out. But basically, they're going agency by agency,
Hmm.
cutting programs they don't like, trying to fire people they don't like, sort of like intimidating people all over the federal government. And it's a mess.
I think mess is just like the key word here. Even the fact that like Musk is taking over U.S. digital services, right? Which is this weird thing a lot of people have not really thought about, but I've always heard it from people, from engineers, especially from people who straddle the world of politics and tech. It was kind of a dream team, because these were people who sacrificed a lot more money and like stock options and the power you get working for a big tech company to do civil work and to do, like, I don't know, potentially legitimately good tech work. So we lose that. And instead of that too, it's these kids going around and just like dismantling things all over the place. There's been some recent news, by the way, like the purported purpose of Doge is to reduce, reduce, make things more efficient. Sure. We've also seen stories like just yesterday there's a story that an armored Tesla project is projected to win a $400 million State Department contract. I believe the language around that thing was changed to be armored EV or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And potentially that could also involve other companies too, like BMW. I think they're going to buy some, but it seemed like it seems like they're going to buy a lot of Cybertrucks to armor up.
Yeah, I mean, this also feels quaint, but
Yeah, yeah.
but like Elon Musk has so much business with the federal government, and with a lot of these agencies that he is now gutting and installing, loyalists in and things like that. And so it's like, SpaceX and Tesla have received billions of dollars of government contracts. And then also some of the agencies that are being dismantled have been investigating his companies.
Hmm.
The CFPB sort of notoriously has been investigating a lot of different, Silicon Valley companies. USAID was investigating whether Starlink was shutting off internet for people in Ukraine uh, fairly or unfairly, I guess, was what they were investigating. And
Hmm.
so Musk now sort of controls this. I think during the first Trump administration, the idea of like you should divest from your companies and conflict of interest and stuff, like it feels quaint at this point. But
Oh my God, does it feel quaint?
yeah, but it's like, I mean, Elon Musk we are really looking at like an oligarchy, and we
Hmm.
are really are looking at sort of the people making the rules benefiting from the loyalists that they're installing all over the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, who benefits is the question we should be asking whenever we see any of these stories, and often it's Musk, or often it's people tied to him, or people within the Trump administration themselves, or Trump themselves, or their family, or something.
Yeah. So, Jason,
Mhm,
can you tell us a bit more about the reporting that 404 did,
yeah,
where you had audio from someone at the GSA? Is that correct? And they were saying something like, "We're losing so much money." Like they're basically talking as if the government had shareholders, but they don't.
mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's probably one of our biggest scoops over the last week is we got audio from this meeting at the General Services Administration, which is the vaguest like possible name for an agency, but they basically do a lot of like cybersecurity stuff for the government. They do a lot of coding for the government. They are in charge of all of the government's real estate. They're basically like a cross agency, like, e- well, they're not an HR department, but they help a lot with a lot of different parts of the government. And within this, there's this technological services division that is made up of coders, and the guy in charge of that now is Thomas Shed, who is a former Tesla engineer. And basically, in this meeting, he was telling folks there that one, they wanted to replace a lot of them with AI, which is
Hmm.
wonderful. So
Yeah,
basically,
like they wanted them to code AI agents that could then like, 10x their output or something. Is that right?
yeah, they talked about making AI coding agents that could work for each government agency and then would be overseen by the few number of humans who are left. And uh, this is actually like a Silicon Valley dream that
Yeah,
lots of
yeah.
companies are trying. Like Mark Zuckerberg said that he wants to do this at Meta, starting very soon. And the difference here, like I'm skeptical whether that will work in any sort of company, but the difference here is that the federal government, like there's a reason why a lot of their software is clunky and old, and it's because it
Hmm.
has to be designed to withstand, cyber attacks. It has to be designed to run like under any circumstance. So that's why a lot of the government's databases are on like old mainframes and stuff. And so, like, the idea that you're just gonna go start writing software all over the federal government with AI is, like, quite concerning, based on the people I spoke to. And then, yeah, they really do at least talk about the idea that the American taxpayer is, like, a shareholder, and they need to return some sort of investment for these folks, and it's like, I don't know, that's really, like, not how government works, and that would be a like huge paradigm shift
Yeah.
in how government is supposed to serve its people.
At the same time, we are not talking about the I don't know, many, many millions, hundreds of millions in taxes that Musk and his companies are not paying properly, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the elephant in the room that I'll just say very briefly is that a lot of these cuts are being done in advance of a massive Trump tax cut that's
right.
supposed to add trillions of dollars to the deficit. And so they are trying to balance the budget, knowing that they're about to cut off a lot of revenue because they're going to give a giant tax cut to the rich.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. We saw the story yesterday that Doge apparently took $80 million right out of a New York
Oh yeah,
bank
but
account. Yeah.
before we get to
Yes.
that, let's
Yes.
talk about the access that they have to the Treasury Department,
Yeah.
because like that's a very murky situation. Jason, I don't know if you have any like more specific information about this, but like yes, they just like walked past security and everything and started like plugging stuff into the
Installed their
IT
own security
equipment.
as well. It seems like really weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, do you mean that they installed their own like cameras or anything, or
Rent a
rent a oh
cops.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. There was the triple canopy cop that
Hmm.
like um Ed Markey and Bernie Sanders didn't just walk past. Um so yeah, they started like rooting around in the IT stuff. There were questions of whether or not anyone had access to like right access to how the Treasury spends money, which is like insane thing for like a department under the
Hmm.
executive branch to be able to do. Um, maybe they do, maybe they don't. What is the like newest information on that, Jason?
yeah. So this is a story that really Wired has done amazing reporting on. I haven't
Yeah,
done
they
much
really
reporting
have.
on it, but I've been reading and I've been following it because it's so insane. And basically, the latest, as I understand it, is that a federal judge said, "Hey, like you can't do this." And one of the reasons that the federal judge, said like get out and delete the information that you have
Right.
until this is able to be appealed to a higher court is that the potential for damage, for irreparable damage, was so high and so urgent. I mean, you imagine something going wrong with how the US government doles out money. It's like I can't think of a bigger potential disaster, really. And so
And there
it
was
is
some talk about whether or not any of Musk's like under 30 coders would even really understand how to like muck around in the treasury payment system because it's all in COBOL.
right. It's all, as I said, like some of these mainframes are quite old. Some of these databases are very old. And this was a highly secure system that only a few people had access to because it wasn't something that you wanted anyone to be able to change. I think that there's still some debate about whether they had write access or read access. I think it doesn't matter all
Right.
that
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
It's just like, the federal government under Trump and Elon Musk is fighting it as though they want write access to be able to change things. And
Mhm.
the idea that you could just like stop payment on a bunch of things because you felt like it, like that's sort of one of the fears. The other fear is that they just break something accidentally. Um, and you think about social security payments not going
Right.
out, Medicare payments not going out, like all sorts of payments not going out, and that throws the country into like actual real instant chaos, I think.
Yeah, they announced that. I mean, early on, one of the first like funding freezes that they announced that broke the Medicaid portal, right? So, yeah,
Yeah.
that was they didn't detect a lot of the stuff is like a house of cards, right? We don't know what relies on what or what depends on what. We saw the story yesterday, by the way, that apparently $80 million was taken from a New York City bank account that was dedicated for FEMA funding, and that was specifically around money for shelter and services. I saw Christy Nome. I saw people like celebrating this in the Trump camp. And meanwhile, the New York NYC comptrollers like issued a blistering statement saying like what is happening here. Basically, New York City cannot take this lying down. I call on the mayor to immediately pursue legal action. They said in a quote. Eric Adams is not going to do anything, apparently, right?
I mean, Eric Adams was just had corruption charges against him dropped.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a headline today that obviously was like a take, but it said Donald Trump is now the mayor of New York City
Mm-hmm.
because he did this massive favor to Eric Adams, the mayor there, and so who
Wasn't
knows?
that a conditional situation too? It was like we're like holding on prosecution until like November or so. So it's basically like making the mayor of the biggest city in the United States dance for his freedom.
Yeah, that's actually a great point because
Mm-hmm.
initial reporting was that the charges have been dropped, but they actually haven't been dropped. They may be dropped, as you said, and so it's not a great situation. I think the fact that Doge was able to pull $80 million out of a New York City bank account is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly scary. The specifics there are not like it's a little bit of a murky situation.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the money has been taken back, but we don't know sort of like how.
Where's it
Um,
going?
Where's it
Yeah.
going? And I guess like there's a New York state law where it has to be out of a commercial bank, and
Mm-hmm.
so like how was the federal government able to seize money that had already been transferred via wire transfer, which you normally can't undo? And so there's some questions about like what type of access do they have? Like why were they able to do this on a
Mm-hmm.
technological level, let alone like a legal and political level? That broke just yesterday, as you said.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more to come there.
I feel like my two-word response to a lot of this stuff is just seems bad. Seems bad that they were able to
Yeah.
do that. Seems bad for the implications for the future. Just briefly, I just want to mention, like, we've also seen many, many examples because of what Doge is doing, because of like the pushes from the Trump side too, to like minimize references to DEI or anything like that. Whenever you see that, folks, remember what they're really saying, and a lot of people are saying this on Blue Sky. What they're really saying is that we want to resegregate this country. That's really what's going on here. But it is wild to see companies like Google, just really dance to the tune of what the Trump campaign is asking for. This goes beyond the whole like Gulf of America thing, which is on Google Maps right now. I feel incredibly stupid that we are living in this timeline that because the president has decreed that is how Google's handling this, but also the removal of things like, I don't know, references to Black History Month, the default calendar entries around diverse topics like that has gone from Google Calendar. And nobody asked for that, but Google's doing that because they're like, hey, I guess this is bad now to talk about these things, or references to trans kids or trans medicine across other companies too.
Yeah, and I don't know if this
Yeah,
counts as like obeying in advance, as people are talking about, like the way you resist fascism is don't obey
right.
in advance, but like they could still be covering their own butts for any possibility of, let's say, Google like crosses the administration somehow in a way that they don't like, and then they'll
Mhm.
complain about like having African American History Month on Google Calendar because that really matters.
And that this is
And
precisely obeying in advance. Yeah,
yeah, but also
because
use that
mhm,
as possible like leverage to,
mhm,
I don't know,
mhm.
restart the Google antitrust case or something like that.
It's just really weird that we live in a world where Costco and Ben and Jerry's are now like among the corporate I don't know, the major companies that are on the side of like progress. I guess Ben and Jerry's was kind of always there, but wild that that is where we are at. It feels like we are living through a semi Demolition Man future or something, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's just whip around the rest of the departments that Doge has
Sure, sure.
touched. So USAID fed to a wood chipper. That's
Hmm.
what Elon Musk said. Like he could have done fun things on the
Gleefully
weekend,
posted
but
that.
just
Yeah.
like, yes, gleefully posted fed to a wood chipper. Then you've got OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, where they've done the fork in the road email, which is exactly the same email subject that was sent to all Twitter employees.
Really helped
In
that whole company, right?
Yeah,
Really brought
in the
them
weeks
together.
after Musk bought Twitter. Um, so far, 75,000, around 75,000 federal employees, which is like 2.5%, maybe a little bit more of the total workforce, have taken the buyout offer. The big
I've seen that number
question.
debated, by the way, because it's attributed to a single anonymous government official. So it's like a
Okay.
lot of people are like, are they doing this to say like they're being more successful than they really are? We don't really.
True, okay.
Yeah.
It's
So
also very,
Mhm.
very much worth mentioning that, a lot of the federal government turns over
Yeah.
every year anyway because of retirements and people going back to the private sector. So this is not some huge win. This is a very small number of people overall.
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of the churn that one would expect from a workforce of 2.5 million anyway. And so, yeah, it might be a little higher for this time, like in the year. But there's also a big question on whether or not these people are going to get the severance that they hoped for. I think the newest news was that the resignation program was restarted by a judge after being held up for like a number of days. And yeah, we'll see if people continue getting paid for 8 months or so as they look for new work. If they don't, there are certainly going to be articles about people who expected to be able to use this income to, I don't know, pay for groceries, pay for childcare, use it as startup costs for their food truck that they've always wanted to do or something. And it's possible that they're leaving like retirement benefits on the table as well.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
covered the Treasury Department. There's also some talk about how they're in NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This is something Project 2025 said threatened American prosperity, but that's
Sure.
really probably because it houses data on climate change.
Yeah. All those
There's
fires and major storms we just had, I think those are pretty threatening to American prosperity too. But
But I mean, there's also a question of, if you don't have NOAA like atmospheric information, ooh, does that mean that everyone's just going to have to buy more subscriptions to things? Are you going to be able to like sell a new pickaxe to all of the miners who like want to know what the weather is going to be? That seems like a interesting area for privatization.
Mhm.
And then like the CFPB, that's doing nothing right now. It was told to do nothing. And then on top of that, Devendra, tell us more about how a bunch of names from the CIA were leaked.
Oh, that was fun. I feel like Ethan Hunt's entire team in the very first Mission Impossible did not need to die. Like they died to protect the knock list. Okay, and what apparently happens is that the Trump administration, maybe through some pressure by the Doge folks, basically pushed for the CIA to share names, full names of new hires over an unclassified email. So again, seems bad. Seems like that's a bad thing that we should not be dealing with information like this, sensitive information like this. But this is one of those stories where it just came and went in like 5 minutes. It is such like a monumentally stupid thing that could be damaging to people's lives, seriously. But we're not actually talking about it much because there's so much other stupid stuff. Like it's just such an onslaught of stuff from this administration that we can't even keep up with all of this. But I wanted
Yeah,
to
I,
point.
I think that when you say like the damage is done and this could affect us for years and years and years,
Yeah.
it's like these are the identities of secret agents. Like this is you've burned them, or
Mhm.
you put them at serious risk, and that's like one of the things. I think also there's been this sort of like broader uh, management by fear sort of thing. Like, Elon Musk retweeted like the idea that, or not the idea, the identity of a judge's daughter who works in the Department of Education, which is another one that's on the chopping block. And it just really feels like, comply or we will potentially put you, in harm's way.
Mhm. Yeah, let's end on that. Is there any sense? I guess at this point, like this is all still fresh. We're not even a full month right into this administration, but a lot of damage has been done. Seems like it will be like a lot of things will continue to happen from the Doge team. I do wonder what sort of pushback we're going to see legally. Democratic leadership really is taking a hands-off approach to a lot of this stuff. Like I'm seeing protests, I'm seeing strongly worded statements, but nothing major. But it does seem like the courts are pushing back. I do wonder where will workers sit on this? Where will labor forces sit? How will people respond to this? It's weird how we entered 2025. I think a lot of billionaires and very rich people were worried about, oh man, people really don't like us right now. And what Elon Musk has done is essentially reminded everybody of why we should really dislike the super rich, like Musk himself and Trump. So I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with any of that stuff. But Jason, anything you want to add before
Yeah,
we
I
head
would
out?
say the
Mhm.
only silver lining is, last week felt like a flurry of actions and
Right,
really, really
right.
bad stuff. And then this week there's still some bad things happening, but some of that pushback has started to yield some results. Like the courts at this point have stopped a fair bit of this. And it's very interesting. Like I'll be interested to see which parts of these actions get appealed and which ones they say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore.
Mhm.
It like we're hanging on by a thread here, I feel, but like the courts are saying like, hey, a lot of this clearly blatantly illegal stuff is illegal. And
Mhm.
that'll take us to next week when we'll see whether they comply or what
Right, right.
happens. But I think that like last week while I was reporting on this stuff, I was like, "Oh my god, this is insane." And
Yeah.
then this week
Yeah.
it's like, "Okay, some of our institutions are holding up kind of." Which I think is a little bit of a silver lining.
A little bit of silver lining. Also, just it's a sign of like how slowly the law moves, I guess, in comparison to like how quickly these folks can do damage, right? Because you can say, yeah, this is illegal, but then it's like, okay,
That's
a
not gonna keep them from exfiltrating data
yeah,
to possible private servers, and then what happens after that?
a
Just
judge can stop them
everybody's
for a couple days or a week as well, and they push it to the Supreme Court, and our Supreme Court is not going to do much to, protect us, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
I think final question for everyone, Doge's stated purpose is find savings for the American taxpayer. What do you think the actual purpose is?
I think we pretty much covered it, right? It's like who benefits is mostly Elon Musk. It's mostly his cronies. I'm sure I would love to like see something from Peter Thiel about like how he is like meddling with his own folks there too. A lot of the stuff is going back to Trump, right? Like it's we saw the story that what was it, $10 million X is paying $10 million to Trump, I don't know, to Trump directly or the campaign because of X's initial Twitter suspension.
And this
And
was all the way back like after January 6th, right?
this is true. But a lot of people were saying X could have won that case, right? Like they didn't have to pay this money, but that's another example of like a major, like the media companies have been doing. It's just like paying to make life easier to paying to play nice with the new administration, and that's kind of where we're at and what we're seeing. We've got a lot of stuff we'll need to be talking about at some point. We'll talk about Brendan Carr. We'll talk about Tulsi Gabbard at some point too, because our new head of national security, everybody, most likely a Russian agent. I don't know what is happening. What have we learned from all the Mission Impossible movies, folks? Apparently nothing. Apparently nothing at all. I don't know. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Where can we find you on the internet these days?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky, Jason Koebler dot Blue Sky Social, and then I'm at 404 Media, which is 404media.co.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, hope to have you back on soon.
Yeah, it's always fun. Thank you.
All right. Take a
All
break
right.
here and just drop that audio to Ben wherever you can, Jason. Thank you so
Cool.
much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good morning. Bye.
Yep, you too. Take
Yeah,
care.
so we're gonna talk to chat for just a minute.
Just briefly, I saw I blocked one person. Hey chat, thank you all for surviving here. I saw that there was a lot being discussed.
Yeah, there was someone in chat who was like Elon defending, and it's like, okay, they weren't even really coming up with all that
No.
salient points. It was just saying like, oh, the founders would have been behind them because like they were annoyed at a 12.5% tax. I don't think that's really how it works.
No, not really. Okay, folks. I think chat did a good job of taking care of yourselves, but I'm sorry if it got too crazy in there,
Yeah,
folks.
but let
Yeah.
me take a look at some other
Mhm.
stuff. I mean, Tom Rogers said Ben is on a Freudian slip today, A minor. No, that was not a Kendrick Lamar reference. That was a
Mhm.
reference to if you privatize things, it becomes a gold rush. And the only people who make money in a gold rush are the people selling tools to the prospectors.
Right.
So, if you are a shipping company or something and you used to rely on like federal weather data that was provided to US citizens for free, all of a sudden you need to start buying weather data from some private company. Isn't that nuts?
That's a pretty simple thing. Hey, I'm glad that we can have these discussions. I haven't seen all the chats here, folks, but nothing we have said in this discussion is controversial. Like you may disagree, and if you are a fan of the Trump administration or a fan of Elon Musk, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know when the love for people who are dismantling this government and this country is going to end, but I guess we'll see. Let's move on to some gadget news. How about that?
Yeah, let's go.
Or some other stuff. And we don't. Yeah, I guess we can mention OpenAI real quick. If you want to talk about the nuclear thing, Ben, I think I didn't fully read that story.
Sure.
You feel free to do that. Okay. Okay, let's move on to some other news. And hey, plain gadget news. You know where I feel safe is when I'm just reading news unrelated to anything around politics or the state of the world right now. So let's talk about the iPhone SE4, which it was projected to drop at some point this week. We have been eagerly waiting for any update from Apple, but hey, like it seems like if you like the cheaper iPhone, this could be a good option for you, potentially for around $500. I think more than the other one. Still a single camera, but the idea is that it's going to be going away with the old home button design, and will likely have the notch and have a similar look to the iPhone 16 right now. I kind of still I wonder who this phone will be for if it's not actually that much smaller than the iPhone 16, Ben. I know you're an iPhone SE lover. What are you thinking at this point? Because you're thinking of when to upgrade.
Yeah, and really right now I'm
Mhm.
thinking that I should be upgrading to like just a base iPhone 16. One of the reasons that I liked the iPhone SE was that it had a physical home button,
Right.
but really all signs are pointing to the fact that there's going to be no physical home button. We're
Was that
going
really
to
one of the reasons, Ben? How,
I like
what do you do? What do you do with that home button? You just like clicking it?
fingerprint unlock.
Fingerprint
You
unlock is
can no
nice, but
longer do on iPhones.
this is true, but you lose so much screen. Like it's funny, like when I go back and hold older iPhones, it's like, oh man, all that screen real estate, which is
Yeah,
taken up
no,
because you have to like make the screen, even between both sides.
it's big
The
bezel time.
It's big bezel time. It takes up so much space at the top and the bottom. So,
Yeah, so that's why I liked the iPhone SE and also just like the price. I've said before on the
mhm.
show that like I like the idea of carrying a phone where if I, drop it down a storm drain or something, that it wouldn't really ruin my budget to get a new one. But we've gotten to the point where
Mhm.
I want to be able to like play around with Apple Intelligence sort of stuff
Yep.
and that I've also proven to myself that I am less likely to drop my phone down a storm drain than I think. Knock on wood.
You
Let's make sure
really
that doesn't
calling it.
happen. Um, but I think now I trust myself a little more that like this one has held up for almost 5 years now. I
Mhm.
think I got the iPhone SE 2 or 3 new around 2020 and it's time for a big boy upgrade, I'd say.
Definitely time for an upgrade. And the thing about Apple hardware is that we've talked about this before. It does last longer. So even if it's an SE, like it would still last you a couple of years. My mom needs a new phone. I ended up getting her an iPhone 13 Plus, and I got it refurbished. It looks great. It's in great condition. Like these are, I don't know. These devices will just stick around longer. If you were looking to save some money, I would recommend actually looking at older devices rather than maybe the SEs. Although
Yeah.
I don't know, like, this one may if it's Apple
That's
Intelligence
what I
capable.
said. We were
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about this at the show planning meeting
yeah, yeah.
yesterday, and I said, "Oh, well, maybe I'm gonna get, like, a 15 Pro or something just because it's a little cheaper," and you were like,
Well,
"No, you probably wanna, like, mess
you
around with
probably want that
exoplanets and
too,
all
but
that,"
not
so
I'm just saying other people may not, but,
yeah.
the other thinking is that if the SE4 will likely be Apple Intelligence capable too. So that actually once you have that demarcation line, then that's a reason not to go back to older iPhones. My mom won't care, so I can put her on a 13 Plus, but I think a lot of people may. Although I see people are really pissed off now when when they've turned off Apple Intelligence, apparently new updates re-enable it, and
Yeah,
it's not liking that whole process,
yeah,
so
I've heard about that.
that's fair. That's fair. I've not like it. I don't hate it enough. Like I do think notification summaries have been useful for me. I don't like it for news stories, but I do like it for just like texts and stuff like that. So that stuff has worked. All right. In other news, we also saw the story that Elon Musk wants to buy OpenAI for $97.4 billion, and Sam Altman says no, thank you. And I think that's the end of that story. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But it is kind of hilarious to think like this is the next thing on Musk's I don't know task list is to take over OpenAI now that it's actually doing something I don't know not useful but
And
something
there's
with buzz.
also, like, a big question of how much he can actually, like, devote time to any one of
Yeah,
these things then, because he loves to talk about how much work he puts in at all of his companies and, he's slept on the factory floor at Tesla or something.
they're sleeping at the
Okay, so
Doge headquarters
yeah,
apparently.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, if you are currently, like, very involved in, like, American government, what are you supposed to do if
Hmm.
the OpenAI bid goes through?
I don't the
There's
board
only
would
so
not.
many
Yeah.
hours in the day, man.
What are you gonna do? Listen, if you're powered by ketamine, there are many things. There are many more hours in the day available to you. Like you can be productive.
Ketamine's not even an upper.
The pictures of his eyes, at I think
You
it
have
was
to make
the
sure that those
device.
aren't Photoshop because I've
Some of them
seen
some of
a
them
few
were
that
probably
are.
Photoshop, but I do like just when you see Elon Musk speaking in person too, he does give off very much the Mr. Burns on the, Mr. Burns is an alien in The Simpsons vibes.
Yeah,
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 this will
and
never happen, but it's hilarious that Elon Musk is trying to make it a thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then
we should have a whole segment about his kid, about X at in the Oval Office telling it seems like he's telling Trump to shush.
yeah,
You should go away,
yeah,
apparently. Hot
if
mic, kid, hot mic. Gotta
if
learn
you
about
had
those.
told me in 2010 when everyone was very excited about Grimes, that Grimes and Elon Musk were going to have a son who was going to shush President Trump in his second term,
Uh-huh.
I would tell you that that was dystopian fiction.
Mhm. That feels like something right out of a sequel to Idiocracy, you know, and that is what we're living in, folks. Speaking of, like, I don't know, unintended outcomes of our current future, apparently France wants to build a gigawatt of new nuclear for AI stuff. You found this interesting, Ben. I'm not surprised that
So
more
the
countries.
thing that I found interesting from
Yeah.
this article is finding out that France gets 2/3 of its power via nuclear to begin with.
France gets a lot of nuclear, and people in France are like, there are a lot of protests, there are a lot of people fighting it. But this is where the argument gets messy, because it's like, if you shut down those nuclear plants
What are you
and
going to
your
switch to?
renewables are not ready, where
Yeah.
is that power going to come from? Think about it.
Yeah, yeah, and there are
It's
big
going to come from natural
questions.
gas and coal.
Yeah,
So,
there are also big questions like where France could end up, putting its windmills for if it
mhm,
wants any kind of wind power. Like the US is uniquely well positioned to use renewables because of how much land we and we alone
mhm.
oversee. Like it's the US, like coast and then international waters. That's not the case for a lot of places like more densely, Europe that has more
Mhm,
densely
mhm.
packed sovereignty
And
in
France is not a
terms
huge
of.
country in general.
Yeah,
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 not
yeah.
much coastline.
So my
Uh,
general point of view on this is that if this is what it takes to get nuclear restarted as an idea for renewable energy and as a kind of transitional technology from
mhm.
fossil-based energy production to like much more efficient, um, completely green renewables, that might not be such a bad thing, and that might be the nicest thing that I say about AI all
I
month.
don't know. I don't know, like, if that extra power is just being used to produce, crappy generative, media, I don't know. It almost seems like a wash, because the problems of potentially introducing new nuclear and the waste of around new nuclear, like, I don't know. It's a complicated topic. I wanna do an episode about that, 'cause, I've had many feelings, many changing feelings about nuclear over the past few decades, and I don't know. It does seem like renewables have been going stronger than we thought, but they need power now. The thing is, building a new nuclear plant takes a lot of money, or it takes a lot of time as well,
Yeah,
in addition to money,
and a
like,
lot of concrete, which is
a
a
lot of concrete.
big greenhouse gas producer too. So,
Mhm.
how much of a wash could it actually be?
Maybe they can have a windmill powered by ennui. That will
Yeah,
just That'll be a self-sustaining
that would be
thing
the
going.
truest, most renewable energy in France, absolutely.
Less psi equals power. Let's move on to what we're working on. Um, hey, you saw my review of the RTX 5090 NVIDIA's card. There are more cards coming, so I think you can do the math in terms of what's happening. I didn't get a 5080 to review, unfortunately, but we should be getting a 5070 Ti and a 5070, and I'm really, really eager to see what the 5070 does for that price point. So that's where I am. I'm also taking a look at the Asus ZenBook A14, which I wrote about back at CES. This is their sort of MacBook Air competitor. It weighs around 2.2 pounds. I'm playing with it right now. It is very underpowered, but man, is it crazy light. It feels insane to hold, honestly. So I'll have a full review of that up soon. Yeah, and let's move on to our pop culture picks. Anything you want to shout out, Ben?
I talked about The Ugly American before. I
Yeah.
talked about how it is really well suited for like a prestige TV adaptation, and I think that it's become even more relevant in the last 2 weeks or so. Um, it's really hard to overstate how much this book, The Ugly American, like shook up Washington in the late 50s, early 60s. Um, I think that you can pretty much directly trace the publication of this book
Mhm.
that was done by a someone high up in the Navy. I think he was a rear admiral or something, and a professor talking about basically how the US's like strategy for global development and anti-communism, because that was the same thing, especially in the 50s, was all messed up and like had no understanding of the facts on the ground
Mhm.
of these areas of the global south where the US was trying to exert influence. And you can trace that directly to the establishment of the Peace Corps and USAID.
Hmm.
So if you want to understand some of the circumstances that led to these programs that are now like being fed to the wood chipper, go read that book. I think that would be a useful thing for Engadget listeners and viewers.
Good shout out. I will definitely. I remember I had a copy at some point in college. I don't think I ever got into it, but I need to go back. All right. And for me, I just want to, hey, you want to take your mind off of things because this has been a heavy episode and news has been crazy. There's some good stuff out there to binge. I want to shout out Creature Commandos on Max, the one. Yo,
I wonder why.
yeah. Creature Commandos, real good. It is sort of like I didn't know anything about these characters before watching the show, but it's another James Gunn, you know, DC universe series. But essentially, what if it was the Suicide Squad, but they were monsters and monsters like a robot that wants to kill Nazis? He's fun.
That's all he wants to
That's all he
do.
wants to do. He's a good guy. GI Robot. And also the Bride of Frankenstein is apparently there. I think the show's a lot of fun. Great voice work. Indira Varma is the voice of the bride. Alan Tudyk's in this. Like it's just fun. It's the stuff that James Gunn does really well of like genre stuff that can be kind of extreme and kind of wild at times, but there's always heart to it. Who's the one, the like weird wild creature, the dog creature? I forget his name.
Oh yeah, the one from the recent Suicide
From the
Squad
Suicide
movie.
Squad movie. He gets a backstory in the show, and it is like it's heartbreaking. James Gunn always knows how to break your heart, so I am looking for this show is fantastic, worth the binge, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he does with Superman because dude knows how to balance genre and heart and character really well. Also want to shout out Common Side Effects, which is also on Max right
Oh
now.
yeah.
Yeah, this one is created by the guy who did Scavenger's Reign. Incredible animated series that is available now on I think that's on Netflix now too, but you can still watch it on Max. This one is about a guy, it's an animated show about a guy who discovers a mushroom that can cure anything, even potentially even death. And this is a fun show that dives into sort of like our pharmaceutical industry, our healthcare industry, but it's also very much like a government conspiracy thing. Has great voice work as well. Freaking Mike Judge is in here. Mike Judge is an executive producer, and he's one of the voices here. You can totally hear it. Just good stuff. Like if you like good thrillers, but also like funny, funny shows, like just funny comedies. This is very much an adult comedy. I think it's worth watch. Also, like the voice cast in general. Martha Kelly, who has become like one of my favorite voices in animation and all sorts of stuff. She starred in Carol and the End of the World. She has this great like deadpan monotone voice, and she plays one of the DEA agents going after the guy who found the mushrooms. She is hilarious, even when she's not trying to be. Just fun to see. So yeah, Common Side Effects, definitely worth a watch. I think 3 episodes are up right now on Max, the one to watch for HBO.
Okay, chat, we're
Wrap
gonna
it.
stick around for a little bit, but we're wrapping the show. So thank you everybody for listening. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by me, Ben Ellman. You can find Devindra online at
Devindra on Blue Sky and Mastodon, and I also podcast about movies and TV at the Filmcast at thefilmcast.com.
If there are any other fiction books that also dramatically affected American foreign policy, please send them to me at heybellman.blueskysocial. Email us at podcast@engadget.com. You can leave us a review on iTunes. And as the producer, I can tell you it definitely helps. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. That includes Spotify.
Hello,
All
chat.
right. We are
I saw a good question from Tom Rogers saying, why hasn't nuclear gotten safer in 50 years? There was a big chill after 3 Mile Island when it came to developing nuclear technology. So a lot of progress that would have been made in the 80s and 90s around new plants just kind of stalled for a while. So that's part of the reason. New plants, supposedly like small portable plants, should be more safe, but they're expensive and tough to
Yeah.
build. Yeah.
Well, the problem is that you need to actually build them in order to
Yes.
get better at building them, and so we just didn't build them for a very long time.
We burned a lot of coal, and this is one of those things where like I am fully on board with like a lot of the messaging from Greenpeace and a lot of like ecological organizations, but guys, that actually did damage, unfortunately.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the funny thing because I think in the like 60s, 70s, maybe even 80s,
Hmm.
we weren't even really talking that much about climate change as much as we were talking about like the hole in the ozone and like acid rain and all
But
of
that
that
was all
stuff.
part of it, right?
I mean, it
Yeah.
was part of like the Anthropocene that we were starting
Yeah.
to understand like our effect as humans on the climate and the ecology of the planet that we live
Hmm.
on. But I don't think that we were talking too much about like a warming world
I
and
think it
like
was
the idea of the
Silent Spring, and Silent Spring was published in 1962, and
oh
that's
yeah,
the thing people
yeah.
keep going back to. So there was a discussion in the 60s and 70s about this, but yeah, it definitely focused more on specific topics, right? Like you're saying, like the hole in the ozone layer, but also
And
nuclear.
also, like,
Mhm.
really important, industrial runoff too.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
not to say that any of that isn't important,
Mhm.
it's just that at that time, carbon emissions took a huge back seat to everything else.
And there were a
And
lot of problems. Smog was a problem, was a
yeah.
big problem. Leaded gasoline, that was a big problem. So, yeah.
So on the other hand, like now, so many urban rivers are much healthier, and that's a great thing.
Mhm.
Like maybe it was a question of let's try to tackle the easier things first rather than carbon emissions, which
Mhm.
are like fundamental to making electricity even now. But man, is it frustrating that we could have had like several more decades of progress in how to make our um, nuclear power safer. But
Yeah.
oops, didn't do that.
Now it's like, renewables, we've made a lot of progress, like solar, the cost and efficiency of solar, incredible work over the past, like, decade, honestly. But now the big thing is, like, people wanna do fusion, somebody's gonna do fusion. People are talking about that, like, mini sun that China has, has been working on, and that could be
Allegedly.
a crazy thing, allegedly. Um, but who knows? Who knows, like, where any of this is gonna go? We're in a
So
weird time,
we
man.
we also have a thing from DPro 9 at the very beginning of the episode. We were talking about Doge. We had a couple of people who were like making trouble in the chat. And DPro 9 is just like, side note, I'm looking for a good robotic vacuum with AI. I would say probably any robot vacuum released in the last what, like year and a half has some kind of AI in it, right?
They in terms of AI, you mean something that will, like, see what is there and look for obstacles? They've been
Yeah.
doing that for a while. They have gotten better. I have to see what are the ones we recommend now, but I've been using the Roombas with, like, computer vision stuff, and they do avoid obstacles. Like, they do a pretty good job, but they're not perfect.
Yeah. So what else are we? I'm looking in the chat for Lucky Dog podcast says Carol in the end of the world was oddly calming. Um
It's like it's a show about the world is definitely ending. All of society knows this. Nothing you could do to stop it. How do you live your life? And there is something, like, oddly, yeah, endearing about that.
yeah, Buddy 305 Love says my issue is nuclear waste. Haven't figured out a proper way to deal with that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big question. I always thought like let's just shoot it into space. But if you have
No.
any problems with your rockets while you're shooting it into space, there's a possibility that you could just distribute it over a very large swath of the world.
Nuclear
Uh,
rain sounds like a bad idea. I
yeah,
probably don't want
so
that.
I would like the idea of shooting it into space, like, maybe that's part of the idea of, like, making a space elevator or something, but if we can't even get, like,
Yeah.
proper nuclear energy to go, how are we supposed to, get everybody to agree on a design for a
Mhm.
space elevator?
My state, by the way, Georgia, just opened a new nuclear reactor. Another one for it was part of the Vogtle. I don't know how you pronounce it actually, but that thing took forever. It took forever to build. It cost a lot of money. They had to immediately add like $30 to every Georgia Power customer's bill because of that thing. Um, just like a complete boondoggle. And there's a lot of reporting too that a lot of the money that went into that went to went into the pockets of people who were helping to build this thing. So the problem is none of this stuff exists in a vacuum. A nuclear plant would have to be built. That is a project that has to be controlled by people, and who knows what regulations they'll have to go through, but also like what hazards they run into, how people will pilfer money out of those builds too. This was a disaster for Georgia, just money wise. It is running, but it took a long, long time. Did not need to take this much money.
Yeah. There is a like bigger question of maybe the best way to do this is like with a like federal construction workforce,
Hmm.
but oh boy,
Oh boy.
that would be going in the opposite direction of what they currently want to do now, because I think that you'd probably be able to get the most bang for your buck out of a like federal workforce that just goes like state to state or something and builds whatever infrastructure projects you might want. But that would require hiring more people. And apparently, did
Hmm.
you see that figure where they said that they wanted like only one hire per four, excuse me,
Hmm.
only one hire po- per four like dismissals or
Hmm.
resignations or something like that in the federal
I
workforce?
don't see that, but it's all very stupid. Like what's happening is that, Silicon Valley essentially does not believe in the idea of government, right? The idea of social services that are not built to produce profit. That is also that's kind of where Trump and Musk kind of
Yeah.
align when it comes to how they think about government. So it sucks, folks. Like we had a shot to continue building something that could help a lot of people, and people said no, and now a lot of people are gonna suffer. A lot of people are gonna die. And it's
Yeah.
hard not to feel too, down about all that.
And on that
But
wonderful note,
folks,
I think we're
yeah,
about done with the stream.
we're done with the stream.
But
We're not done talking about this stuff because
yeah,
I'm not kidding. We do have to talk about Brendan Carr. We should at some point talk about Tulsi Gabbard when it comes to like cybersecurity. That is an angle for us as well. Things are bleak, folks. So look to your communities. If you think we're just spouting garbage, then I'm sorry, but it seems like some of the conversations in the chat were constructive. Like
yeah,
it seems like people took away some interesting ideas from that. So if you are worried about the state of the world, take care of yourself, take care of your community. I'm going to be doing more volunteer work. I'm going to be doing more stuff around like immigration help and immigration awareness efforts to help people deal with ICE raids and stuff here.
yeah.
So there are a
One
lot of
more
ways you can help. Do
Yep,
what you can.
one
Pick a
more
lane
gadget.
and help with. Yeah.
I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's okay.
One more gadgety comment from Mo Esquire. I'm
Yep.
definitely looking forward to Engadget's review of the 5070. I want to build a new gaming rig, and as much as I like the 5090, my proletariat budget is more interested in the 5070.
I mean,
Absolutely.
absolutely. That is why I'm very eager to see more about the 5070. From what I hear, we will probably be reviewing that like closer to the end of the month. So just sit tight, don't buy anything for a while. I don't know though. Like stock disappears so quickly. I don't know how easy it's gonna be to buy these things, but yeah. Stay tuned, folks, and keep an eye on our reviews.
Yeah, so thank you to DPro9. Thank you to Inner Locus. Thanks for watching Buddy 305 Love and Mo Esquire and Nathan Bacchus and D Man. And who else is here? Western Dr. 1DW, Lucky Dog Podcast, Xenilon, Turbine spelled with a 1. Thanks everybody for watching. You remember stuff that we forget. You make the episode better. And again, just thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, folks. We're